Reclaiming Our Visionary Minds by Ken Perez. The following presentation of multi-genre art and meta-speculations is an example of how someone truly followed his free will, how I expressed the unfathomable forces which shaped him, me, and world culture in a personal yet relevant dialogue beyond race, class, the limitations of reason and imagination. Hence his limitless styles hinting at multidisciplinary reasoning, not schizophrenia. Visionarism can develop our dormant multi-perceptual mental regions according to our sensual language and iconography. This inner liberation can help us stabilize the present info load of a digitized, fast-paced world and the accompanying intergenerational traumas of racism, classism, and other systemic oppressions that threaten to upgrade themselves and postpone systemic collapses. Our deeper selves will be reflected in our culture, gender, arts. In that deeper sense, PC really means being personally correct. All miseries and frustrations are related. War, violence, anxiety, rape, destructive obsessions, strained racial and gender relations, and so on. This includes our confusion about how to reconcile all contradictions and ponder revolutionary yet non-reactionary solutions, giving even the most taboo feelings the healthiest expressions. Ironically, our frustrated desires for meaning, love, friendship, security, creativity have exasperated this because our very inner powers have been undermined, exploited, and hijacked by artificial culture. Our present culture is a mutation of tribal cultures which our ancestors pioneered with their connection to primal mind. Now it has us, the descendants of dissidents, deferring to the ultimate medium which they conceptualize, an organic sentient medium within mediums, scientific, technological, medical, artistic, academic, that are meant to service. And we're at the mercy of designated experts, gurus, prophets, tyrants, social influencers, and opportunists, people interpreting our own visionary minds for us, discouraging true democratic progress. He may have accomplished one of the greatest feats ever, symbolically conquering the very forces which compel us to seek futile validations from compromised authorities. For example, transcending the impulse for fighting wars, engaging in petty regressive Darwinian contests, exhibitions of intellect, beauty, and power, or being at the mercy of IQ tests, chasing championships, trophies, degrees, vulnerable to immediate and institutional humiliations, abuses, discriminations, and trauma. Did he dismantle the ultimate soul mind control system relative to him, the root of all intergenerational oppressions and countermeasures, whether tyrannies, revolutions, the totalitarian megatechnologies and superweapons their self-conspiring, opportunistic policies perpetuate? Did he symbolically win all possible wars and subdue the most daunting threats by daring to envision more empowering solutions? Can this far out presentation be a clue to remaking their story into our story, allowing culture, science, technology, the economy, and general education serve us, since they emanated from our minds, not the other way around? The next great visionary won't come from some Ivy League university or be some indigo soul. He'll be the ultimate outsider beyond the calculations of a social engineer, cultural speculator, a scout of gifted pupils, or an AI IQ test, the chaotic cosmos itself. He'll be an outsider who exposes what a supposedly advanced society lacks while offering what it seeks with its petty elitist ventures. Although it thinks he's socially inept when in fact society is inept and impersonal, perceiving him as dangerous when he exposes their intergenerational fears and the internalized hostility which will long remain after he's gone, if they don't heed his lesson. He'll be a conceptual psychic in the most rad psycho world ever. What are these mysterious traits and environmental factors of an autonomous, which is deeper than genius? He'll be one of the most marginalized ethnic minorities, a Puerto Rican American who reflects and illuminates our universal traits of quirkiness, eccentricity, and nonconformity. The outsider, misfit, outcast, pariah experiences common discriminations among target minority groups of all kinds, representing our mysterious selves which we repress yet that contain insights we seek from biased outer authorities, their objective interpretations muddling our subjective powers. These universal underdogs include the punk fringe, underground, and subculture. This minority group, Puerto Rican Americans especially, is so colonized that it seldom heeds its own profits, usually keeping it simple or following materialistic endeavors, the American dream, or hater player leagues of entertainment, sports, or colonized Christianity, or the icons of dominant cultures other than its own. He'll be afflicted with unsavory traits like a slight intellectual disability, which is in actuality a misdiagnosed multi-cognitive sense, dormant and repressed in everyone. He finds social customs and general communication, language, retarded, not himself, and he thinks that math limits numbers. Math limits numbers, creates more divisions, and multiplies problems. Grammar discourages communication. Higher education dumbs down that great intellectual equalizer, curiosity, and both commercial and fine art mostly discourages visions. We're all natural mathematicians, scientists, and artists. Regardless, since we constantly organize, deduce our personal spaces, estimate time, distances, and organize our environment in aesthetically pleasing forms, like decorating. He won't be some young prodigy either, which implicates social engineering forces at play, a la eugenics. He'll be a self-created, middle-aged prodigy, a pure genomaly. This is important because many paradigms need to shift, like elders becoming younger than the next generation, discouraging ageism, and last becoming first. The latest is the greatest forever. He'll be a Sir Bro, or Sir Dude, Sir Man, because he's older but hip and relevant, beyond anyone's culture bias. The ultimate, this ultimate outsider sense is important because he'll be in a more advantageous position to explore our common alienation and experiences of discrimination, of being misunderstood or not fitting in. Even the most validated of us have felt left out, whether a top actor being turned down a role, a business tycoon having his or her proposal rejected, a brunette supermodel being shunned in favor of a blonde or vice versa, and and so on. Elite rejections and disappointments. Thus, not heeding his all-inclusive vision may mean our hyper-victimization and confusion before some super-inhuman phase or social collapse, unlike what happened to prior societies after they ostracized their prophets. But our potential for curiosity and meaningful connection is far greater than our certainty at fear and discrimination. I use my sensual passions for visionary narrative art, writing, speculative meta-philosophy, inner culture, and my unique fitness regimen, fightness, to own my sacred dreams. An example of how one can free oneself from the ultimate mind control system. Ultimate because of its various intergenerational guises. It's so conglomerated and amorphous that no one remembers its base function, a kind of dementia and psychosis which guides our unconscious. My dream is to free you from your culturally induced nightmares. My transcendent gift is to create my own genius so that you can see your gifts, including unexpected surprises on your rebirth day. I've set the example of recreating the inner organic vision with my conglomerated work, which symbolically depicts higher technologies, utopian societies, evolved humans, more empowering narratives. For example, all outer visions, simulations, illusions, and hallucinations which we escape into, like the occult, pop cultural, the scenarios of movies, gaming, books, art, including the inhuman standards of high culture, virtual reality, augmented reality, to outright mind control originates from us, our deepest visions and neuro-evolutionary potential. Although we defer to these limited versions of our highest dreams and deepest desires, or defer to the interpretations of designated biased experts, we need to reclaim our primal visionary minds from short-sighted elites and undisciplined masterminds, psychologists, neuroscientists, trends forecasters, cult and mainstream gurus, corporate-sponsored visionaries of various fields who've misinterpreted and dictated our potential generations before we were born. Otherwise, they update caste systems or intervene in indirectly manufactured crises stemming from our collective ignorance, saving us, giving the illusion of saving us while maintaining control systems in all their seemingly progressive forms, capitalism, progress, globalization, while undermining and compromising the very crucial revolutions they provoke. It's not only crucial but possible to reclaim our primal vision, our base connection to the eternal, the primal eternal, not primitive in the superstitious sense. The primal eternal is sentient cosmic info, evolutionary residue emanating from Big Bang-like emissions of probable timelines and futures. It's extensional of our cosmic DNA, a kind of transbiology in progress or future bodies within worlds and vice versa, in conjunction with our ever-deepening awakening. How would human bodies, cities, and technologies appear to the developing senses of our microbial ancestors, microbes? Would they appear like titans, trippy sci-fi landscapes, and UFOs? Do some paranormal visions or altered states hint at the outer possibilities of our environmental counterparts? Are these visions also used by social engineers against us to perpetuate mental illness, cognitive dissonance, not stimulate our shared visions? These primal codes also represent variations of basic mechanical forms and functions, whether bioanatomical, technological, environmental, geo. For example, try explaining the possibility of TVs, satellites, telecommunications, surveillance, lasers, nanotech, aircrafts, computers, submarines to medieval leaders, much less peasants in their own terms. Like you can see biblical epics in oracle-like boxes, including other cities from across the world you never heard of. You can fly to another nation and to outer space in ark-like vessels. You can talk to anyone, no matter the distance, in handheld devices, electronically simulated telepathy. Imagine what lies beyond our modern technologies once we outgrow the lies. Can our modern technology, which has come so far, evolve into something organic, sentient? Our visionary mind projects a multisensory perspective that's not supernatural in the superstitious sense. It may require a more inner organic process like visionary art, meditation, and storytelling than occult practices or its futurist mystical manifestation, AI mind mapping, anyhow. I theorize that it's more in league with the rational, since it's transrational, not irrational, expressed via metaphors, not just metaphors. It's a co-evolutionary process that's unlike stimulating our cosmic lifelines in communication networks, particles and cosmic stuff which mirrors our illuminating DNA at indirect connection points via galactic shifts and alignments pertaining to the astrological. It underlies unified fields within fields that are in flux, states of unification, the ultimate psycho-oracle-like art medium and multi-engineering blueprint for the very complementary sciences, philosophies, and methodologies essential to create utopian societies. Utopias that are built on multidisciplinary sciences, technologies, and interdisciplinary reasoning. Diversity through multiculturalism. In conjunction with its socio-symbiotic practices according to the particular needs and abilities of its flower-like citizens in the democratic garden. Awakened visionary minds can formulate the codes for medicinal and environmental healing and symbiosis, possibly ultimately manifesting the perceptual multiverse beyond energy and matter, i.e., the afterlife, in manners more organic than AI transhumanism, though it can use AI tech to degrees. Our heightened awakening can stimulate our cosmic counterparts and lifelines in whatever form to accelerate and encourage energy and matter to merge, another level of intimate cosmic magnetism mirroring our primordial awakening. This is the conceptual formula for time traveling, shape-shifting, and the afterlife. Fantastical ideas that are extensional of modern activities our ancestors never imagined we do, like internet and TV channel surfing. Every university, library-like categorizer of vast info is historical, evolutionary culture data for something transcendent, from museums to multiplexes, book catalogs, DVD racks. What deeper level of consciousness reality can our greatest works of art, our scientific, technological, medical achievements, and general cultural feats evolve to or hint at these visionary innovations? I get my cue from Japanese culture for my multi-engineering hypothesis in the forms of mindful, meditative multitasking discipline. For example, I mop, clean, rearrange, and declutter my house with many sensibilities of a martial artist, athlete, artist, surgeon, visual shapeshifted as I improvise many techniques and dynamics which can translate into concepts for robotics, machines, and novel art mediums. Novel art mediums. This alters my mind while expanding it to see more patterns and data for many skills and mindsets. Any activity performed mindfully can inspire altered states, epiphanies, and connective variations of free association. I theorize that our ancestors used primal mind to pioneer agriculture, hunter and gathering techniques, storytelling, and other precursors to science, technology, engineering, and general culture. They had a more personal, receptive, shamanistic connection to nature, and their minds expanded, as if given them spiritual consciousness, i.e., concepts of dreaming, praying, wishing, visualizing. But they opened a Pandora's box of variables that overwhelmed them, though these variables can be complementary. The Pandora's box can be a treasure chest of abundance. The Pandora's box can be a treasure chest of abundance. They got caught up in tribalism, warfare, and formed domination systems and lost primal communal ties in conjunction with environmental cataclysms like continental drifts, floods, and possible cosmic cataclysms and other anomalous phenomena. Chaos which seemingly mirrored the tensions of our heightened prehistoric awakening on levels beyond time and space. Perhaps the concepts of time and space came to be in this 3D reality that is still a prologue. These tribes, ancestors of various races and nations, possibly more closely related than we believe, separated and advanced in their relative ways, becoming estranged and on guard against rivals, rather than form more inclusive, diverse tribes. They evolved accordingly to their new environments, forgetting most of their primal connections to each other. Global world reunion is essential to reconcile anthro-evolutionary contradictions. Hence, our personal connections to cosmic catalysts for collective empowerment were assimilated into totalitarian empires in conjunction with its impersonal calculating agenda, their agenda. This is akin to folk and indigenous cultures being hijacked into our present corporate culture. Our primal religions were mutated by synthetic state religion, which possibly used it as psychic data for their secret occult rituals and deities, and communication with deities, with their pyramids, megaliths, dark chambers, the predecessor of supercomputers, movie houses, surveillance, and other mega technologies. In this sense, science, technology, and the supernatural may not be so separate. The conceptual stem cells for NASA, Silicon Valley, physics, and our seemingly far-out technology and advanced weapons may have had an occult basis in terms of its warped practices of primal mind visions, which are meant to reveal healing, all supportive, free energies. The dichotomy between atheism and theism, spirituality and reason, humanism, may be false, keeping the populace divided and from reclaiming their power together. Domination systems always mapped and interpreted unseen or probable realities via astrology, tarot, trance-inducing meditation, deep thinking, and other esoteric to psychological practices that encouraged altered states the world over according to a nation's beliefs, steering the course of history according to a borderline psychotic interpretation by traumatized, superstitious seers. Hence visions of master races, divine destinies, chosen ones, designated enemies. Our arrested perceptions and how they're distorted by unqualified, unethical elites with ties or bloodlines to ancient fallen empires to steer historical courses is the root of all oppressions, injustices, specifically the demonic forms they take: war, crime, corruption, mass propaganda, sadism, fear, dog-eat-dog competition, et al. The reactionary, opportunistic, draconian countermeasures of social engineers as well: police states, martial law, patriot acts. Our sacred drives have been undermined into code calculations of empathy, curiosity. Hence our compromised desires for success, love, acceptance into dehumanizing social models that is the God so terrible that we dare not utter its name, capitalism. Heavenly utopian ideals are reduced to cold data and divisive numbers, codes, and esoteric symbols. At best, our academic methodologies are clues. At worst, they limit us. This is why fundamentally uncompromising natural forces bordering the supernatural, such as healing, transevolution, the possibility of immortality, are weaponized into hellish things like mind control, warlike mega technology, and industrialization. For example, atomic bombs should be environmentally healing force fields. Caste systems or glitzy segregated metropolises should be more inclusive utopias. Supercomputers can map the very organic data centers of the minds that created them, allowing us to understand how we can outgrow the animalistic aspects of human nature. The elites are ruled by an ancient yet self-revising psychotic hallucination of what human potential is. Hence the genocidal implications presented by encouraging the survival of the fittest, the seemingly unending wars, conspiracies, despair, culture struggles. We're meant to use our diversity to become a race of self-mastery, not edit and exploit our finest thoughts, genes, for the goal of becoming a master race. We can reimagine the origins of these inhuman, unfathomable systems and parasitic paradigms, which are distortions of generally healthy aspects of culture, academia, science, art, politics. Our repressions contribute more to our oppressing institutions than we're consciously aware of via our exploitative, semi-prostituting social roles, work, higher education, acquiescence, unhealthy conformity, and the outright plagiarization of our most brilliant thoughts on the techno-psychic level, i.e. mind control, surveillance, data mining of all types, even in esoteric occult practices that serve as the precedent and intergenerational blueprint for high-tech control. But we can reverse this psychic headlock because the mind is far greater than the system it conceptualizes, whether Silicon Valley, megatechnologies, AI, theories of relativity, capitalism, socialism. There's more of that great idea from where it came, but it requires our consenting consensus. This is doable despite the elites insisting on their divine genetic superiority to dictate and mutate our own visions to us in the forms of propaganda, various philosophical academic doctrines, discriminating IQ tests, including art, literature, entertainment, expressing what the good life is, what we should strive for. You become extra human when you cultivate your inner culture and compare notes with others on similar paths, as opposed to competing, which automatically makes one super anything, as opposed to being super inhuman by engaging in stagnating to regressive gladiatorial Darwinian endeavors as dictated by the affluent, the established. Rich people need the impoverished for their very wealth more than the poor do, to keep them poor especially, though they're propagandized to depend on the affluent. Third world nations have rich resources, so they're really third bases for the first base of the first world. Savage nobles, colonized colonizers, colonized colonizers, and mind-fucked mind controllers hate themselves for it on some level they can't articulate, but project it onto designated others who they envy for their potential for an organic understanding of what their perverted, weak, yet disempowering, compromising, flimsy social machinations strive to master. Hence, the need to exploit and plagiarize and undermine our heavenly visions, inverting the ultimate underdog into some false high-tech idol. How much of their designated gods, superheroes, action icons are a conglomeration of various minorities and unacknowledged heroes, geniuses throughout history. The can't beat 'em, join 'em mentality rules the elites, underlying Eurocentrism and its unholy alliances with prosperous nations in Asia, the Mideast, the West, and everything in between, throughout the world that traveled similar paths in the formation of monarchies, empires, dynasties. European tribes, ancestors of Teutons, Celtics, and others lost in history, were bested by each other, but formed unsteady alliances, becoming aware of their lighter complexions and other perceived shared qualities when they came in contact with their displaced darker kindreds across the globe. The descendants of Europeans got over their base humiliations from each other and accepted that Cain and Abel made amends. Big Brother had to kick your ass for your own good. It wasn't that he was jealous of your blessings or environmental advantages. These siblings needed to subjugate the world together. But this humiliation and trauma, self-hatred remains, hence the need to project it onto racial others who you envy for their unique, potentially complementary gifts. The can't live with them, can't live without them rules the mind of the oppressor. I resent people interpreting my mind for me, like psychiatrists and gurus, much less motivational thinkers and other experts, in terms of resolving master-slave relations, even benign ones, like between teacher and student, expert and novice, boss and worker. Unless I'm learning skills and something from someone with more expertise, which encourages more consent. Teachers should also learn to teach so they can teach others to learn. The walkthrough method is perfect for learning mechanical skills, like an internet technician guiding you through the steps with patience, for example. Also, a botanist doesn't demand that plants explain themselves or defer. He or she studies them, modifying the environment accordingly as the mediating shepherd. Our visionary minds are the missing component, that ultimate lesson we seek but can't learn from any expert or master. How do you rediscover your power? Envision the freest society possible. What will you see if you never heard of hate, rape, war, racism, the concept of races, celebrity, incriminating thought-stopping terms like creep, weirdo, bitch, or whatever slur, or even positive things like genius, master? Will we see what's already abundant? Will we constantly heal, grow beyond our genetics? You can compare notes on more consenting levels with even masterworks and news reports. Once you acquire some of this all-permeating perspective, we can have others' data measure up to our healthiest vision rather than defer to them. Rules are meant for people overwhelmed by the options. The highest law encourages absolute freedom. This level is stimulating, not demanding. One uses one turn-ons to cultivate the radical ethics for this freedom, which encourages liberation automatically, yet paradoxically, by envisioning these ethics, we can define our many identities in non-schizo ways, our gender, sexuality, interests, brilliance, as opposed to measuring up to what's trendy, or responding with counter-traumas to an inherently traumatizing, opportunistic, cynical system. Our openness encourages trends to be more cyclic and timeless, relevant and inclusive. We have free will, but are not liberated enough to follow it, since we're following the erratic, yet cold and calculated script of writers, producers, and directors, driven insane by too much freedom by way of undue privilege. This is complicated since they've devised this intergenerational script, a self-revising blueprint for caste systems, by plagiarizing our innermost visions on some mysterious psychic level generations before we're born. What's this unspoken, unwritten social script? I've speculated with my sci-fi tales that all collapsed empires, lost and known in recorded history from Rome to Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Aztecs, including recent Asian, Mideastern, and European monarchies, dynasties, empires, and the Axis powers who had won World War II on the genocidal ideological level have scattered and mutated into an intergenerational international cabal. We've been fighting World War III in slow motion since in the virus-like forms of unending conflicts. In the Mideast, Vietnam, Korea, the Cold War, South America, Bosnia. Tyrants and their descendants have formed an international empire scattered throughout the world. I've speculated with all these unending crises, culture struggles, compromised revolution, that it's keeping us divided and blind, surely but slowly planning a mass migration to some unknown continent, artificial environment. This implicates space colonization, or the seeding of an artificial universe with super 3D printer-like mechanisms. I've speculated about this long before reading the research of credible independent researchers like Mae Brussell and her work about the roots of ongoing fascism and its ultimate goal. They've hijacked, undermined, exploited, and weaponized every good idea to realize their unethical goal of creating a perverted, synthetic version of utopia, while ruining and ghettoizing Earth with inhumane policies, pollution, grooming us to accept our own genocide and police state, about whether we should keep nuclear weapons for deterrence, which dictator to vote for and such, rather than which empowering, healing, social reform to undertake. The latter are insane debates concerning nuclear weapons, whether we should whatever. We're encouraged to indulge in escapist entertainment rather than exploring our inner celebrity and culture, or participate in divide and conquer aspects of identity politics, or scapegoat the immigrants displaced by the disastrous globalist policies which give first world nations their privilege, rather than embrace all-inclusive revolution. Compromise revolutions always leave somebody out. This scattered international network, not all of it is a cabal, is also at odds with each other, a colorless, bland power structure. At best, ideas of Illuminati, secret societies, aliens, demons collaborating with us are diversions, metaphors for the schizo processes of the petty elites' psychotic interpretation of the accelerated probabilities projected by primal visionary mind. The twisted visions of conflicted minds lead to us against them mentalities, i.e., anti-Semitism, anti-American, Asian, etc. Though there's a lot to criticize in dominant cultures, we need to translate our dialogue to pro-humanity and be anti-us against them activists. However, these international fascists are anti-human, but can recruit anyone: business people, engineers, scientists, economists, entrepreneurs, to support their benign genocidal policies: gentrification, inadequate housing, ghettoization, poor inner-city education, profit-driven healthcare and prisons, militaristic policing, and wars. Exploiting citizens while either rewarding them with a higher position in the collapsing caste systems or ghettoizing the lower classes who think they'll be rewarded for their patriotism and compliance. Or they co-opt social reform, civil rights, and other liberating movements. Self-entrepreneurs into the liberal caricature that is upgraded libertarianism. Its supposed independence can be monitored to serve private yet totalitarian agenda models like corporations, and other excluding cliques. Again, the libertarians can be used to further the agenda of cult of totalitarian corporations. The sides of rival empires aren't so easily distinguishable since they reshape each other. They're so mutated that enemies can be allies and vice versa. I visualize them as being three entities, which means they can be something holy like the three wise men and Holy Trinity, not stooges. Not stooges. One side is socio-mutated from collapsed empires. The second is comprised of ancient survivor tribe nations, which hold cultural keys to the very empires they fled from, holding both the knowledge they used to integrate, reform, diversify, and shape dominant cultures, indirectly strengthening the very empires they were second-class citizens in, while using sabotaging mechanisms or their expertise in ways not so ethical to ensure their survival from the inevitable collapses based on the contradictions of both parties' compromises. Hence the never-ending pattern of unholy alliances, plausible deniability, and scapegoating. The third, ironically, is the so-called Third World, the colonies of all empires and everything in between, the psychic and geopolitical source of their advancements. There's good and bad in the first two, since they built, contributed to, and ruined world culture. But they merely need to acknowledge their privilege and apply our methodologies in a more balanced, self-correcting way. Fascism ceases to be a reactionary counter-trauma and thus takes its healthiest form by incorporating empowering non-narcissistic self-narratives and non-hive communal ventures, complementing the socio-humanist endeavors of the Third World. Utopian socialism becoming the community, and society is me, as opposed to an ism. Restorative evolution is the organic equation to complement militant symbiosis. Globalization evolves into global world reunion. But what perspective can unite reactionaries, extremists of all types, fascists and social activists, winners and losers, weak and strong? The ultimate outsider I embody by exploring our common discrimination of being misunderstood, including our alienation from and potential to reconnect to primal mind. How did I use my turn-ons, my sensual passions, to truly follow my free will and reconnect to primal mind? How did I define my own multifaceted personas to edit the social roles assigned me, like radical token minority, humble, unthreatening, low-level worker who knows his place, or adopting some false sexual identity, among others? I'm not attacking alternate genders' lifestyles, but I think our possible multisexuality should neither be repressed or imposed on others by rad counter-trauma trends. Rather, I use my diverse identities in a more mindful, consenting way. How did I also social edit potential destructive roles like cult leader, follower, extremist, fascist, sexual deviant, thug? How did I give my culturally induced dreams to be a fighting champion, elite artist working in Hollywood their most rational yet transcendent expressions, so that I can inspire wonder, not envy? Did I really lack discipline and heart in not mastering the skills of formal fighting and art? Or did I sense a more fluid, smarter, more playful way of working, which requires that process and medium become one in an avant-garde oracle channeling way, more of a relationship than assignment? In that sense, there are two perfections, our linear perfection and a more fluid, organic influx perfection, which is the avant-garde. So I realized the futility of competing in eugenically rigged, outmoded Darwinian games like extreme professional sports and materialistic arts which encourage our bestial instincts, because I'd be limiting my mighty spirit to the constraints of rules, so-called character building yet dispiriting, humbling discipline. I'm more interested in conquering all challenges on the spiritual conceptual level, which compels us to play such regressive games. I want to understand what compels us to play such regressive games, I mean. I realize that we've already won on the primal spiritual level. Reality is ruled by its highest probabilities. We need to tune into the healthiest outcomes. Lost opportunities present themselves in different forms. Social crises are wake-up calls. We've already written many series with alternative narratives. Like a comic series. What compels us to prove ourselves? To chase trophies, titles which aren't our concoctions. This has totalitarian implications because we limit evolutionary explorations to games which perpetuate hate. Even when we earn others' respect and adoration, their love still has hateful implications. The following contrasts my present self-aware self with a complacent me in an alternative scenario. But I'll focus on my trans-utopian ideals and solutions before expressing my personal experience of Paradise Lost. It is the best way I can elaborate on my vision reclaimed and how it hints at curing our perceptual gouging and mental lobotomizations. In this present reality, I'm conscious of my creations, multimedia and genre illustrated thesis booklets, my alter egos and dream worlds, which I use to symbolically understand everything. How I'm free to design my ideal self, which shamanistically embodies everything I admire in mainstream culture: samurais, giant robots, kaiju, great MMA boxers, paranormal beings, and central bio-jewelry, in a more personalized, unique forms, which honors the inspiration, which is mostly Japanese culture. I'm Ken, starseed son of the shadow goddess, warrior, healer, ninja, which is a twist on the Spanish term for girl, niña, and ninja, also expressed through the numbers 99, 9. I recently learned 9 is a high number in ninjutsu. She's my maternal personification of the parental cosmos which birthed me to conceptualize the divine infinite in a sensual, personal way. A Puerto Rican American's universalist internalization of both shamanistic and pop Japanese culture, beyond any shaming notions of otaku or weeaboo. Hence, my name Ken, which is so predominant in its language, like kendo, shuriken. Ken is also the name of many anime heroes, and Kenny is a popular kaiju meme. The lonely boy I once was when consuming Gojira and Gamera films on a spiritual level beyond notions of entertainment, circa 1978-82, before I was aware of such memes. I often ran around in trances, reenacting the movies in ways not unlike Shinto-induced altered states. Hence my spirit gods, the Kenosaurs, are the conceptual descendants of kaiju. I'm the descendant of the Solves and Metamen. I'm Time Puerto-Rican. A twist on my name again. And Power Rican. I'm an Amorican. So, combination of American, Amor, which means I could be something more than my identity, Amorican. I'm not just Puerto Rican, which triggers contemptful associations to the populace, i.e., people canoeing their way through floods, which is actually the result of inadequate to rigged imperial infrastructure for the purpose of disaster capitalism interventions. Actually, Puerto Rico means rich port and is synonymous with cool phrases like Futu-ri-Ken, Power Rican, Thera Puerto Rican, as opposed to the more elegant French, which rhymes with wrench, German, which is Herman, and germ people. I'm not hating on any culture, but deconstructing how the masses associate good with a nationality or nobility. I hope to critique Eurocentrism and its expendable allies in ways that are not anti-white, because they're anti-human and, and pro-inhumane policies. But I need to reclaim my true wealth, the very rich Caribbean resources within my DNA too, so that my estranged kindreds throughout the world can unearth their souls, which means everyone, not just Puerto Rican, but again, my universal take from my perspective. I'm not responding to institutional oppression with hate, but passionate outrage and defiance. We live in the best of the worst of all worlds, so the top reflects our unsavory traits in even its designated losers. Corruption exists in hierarchies, e.g., gangbangers can't exist without cutthroat Wall Street tycoons or corrupt politicians. Thugs and schoolyard bullies are culturally spawned by authority figures who use unjust laws and rules to subjugate and so on. Hater players within the inner city are pale imitations of the haters that rule the world with their soul-crushing materialism. I've been bullied by fellow minorities, who've internalized this hip colonization, in all of its seemingly liberating guises of striving to make it in entertainment, sports, or as just street gangs. I've been bullied by unawoken blacks, including my own kind, Puerto Ricans, Asians, and lower class whites, Irish. But if we all can hate the same, can we love the same in unique ways? In the best of all worlds, where the kids imitate the elders in good ways? White is might, but it is also slight. White supremacy is actually an overblown inferiority complex that needs to be reinforced as propaganda in the oppressor, as much as it is in the minority, if not more so. Again, some forms of discrimination is coded jealousy of the minority's unfamiliar power which can be complementary, not threatening. I never thought that the people I unconsciously admired on TV were white anyhow. I never thought of that term white, they were white. I thought they were estranged kindreds or extended family in the suburbs. I redefined what it means to be brown, another unsavory caste system term. People of color are darkened by white America's inner darkness. People too pale to be white or any color, hence their need to white out anything they don't understand, exposing their possible envy of anyone with a more radiant tan complexion. This darkness projected onto us has made us the true ninjas, since we mastered the paths you overlook, like infinite shape-shifting shadows cast by the sun. And we become the shooting stars when nightfall comes. Shuriken. It's interesting that if you remove the two G's from the sometimes slur, sometimes slang, nigga, and insert an N and J, you get ninja. Though G is a term of respect in urban culture. I use nigga because I've been called this slur by colonized blacks in the inner city, reclaiming it and translating it into a healthier form, which is my way of forgiving myself for taking their abuse while hoping to inspire them. It's not that you dissed me anyways, it's that you're dissing, which means something is missing. In this respect, we're focusing on the wrong iggers. It's the riggers, the racists, who engineered such a rigged system with so many triggers like nigger, spick, gook, jap, guinea, mick. Blame the riggers. As for gold, it's largely comprised of brown, considering that Puerto Ricans evolved under the golden sun on lush brown beaches and God's palm trees. I'm a head-to-toe blonde, as opposed to mustard heads with eyes made blue and skin paled under cold, inhuman conditions. Indigenous yet mixed folk like Puerto Ricans have ancestries. Some of us have German, Dutch, Irish, Chinese, Lebanese, French, Italian, Corsican DNA, among others, not just Taino, Spanish, and African. We may have more cosmic biodiversity than the inhabitants of first world nations who are compromised by animalistic aspects of evolution. That's why the anthropologists are so infatuated with Darwinism. Maybe some of them evolved from apes or other anomalous interferences. not other folk with the very DNA they need, hence their bestial yet rationalized compulsions for war, colonization, oppression, domination, while guys like me sense more. Hence their pretentious standards and high respectable culture while pushing the conqueror drive in all of its guises. Respectable cultured people are props and eugenical mutations, super athletes, supermodels, mutations of healthy ideas like biodiversity, while I'm a spaceman specimen and pound for pound force to reckon with. I've written parables about how geneticists extracted my cosmic rich DNA through quantum blood tests by simulated mosquito-like particles for the purpose of cloning multi-ethnic Aryan supermen. At what point does reality imitate art? As for my seemingly unattractive brown complexion, many noble, powerful, beautiful wildlife share this golden brown tint, like deer, big cats, brown eagles, rabbits. I call myself the jacked rabbit. Don't follow the white rabbit, Alicia. Follow the brown one, the jacked rabbit. He'll lead you to all connecting website-like portals, not limbo-like rabbit holes that go nowhere. I explore utopian worlds, alternative courses of evolution, and bond with my cosmic kindreds. I experience both great and terrible things in ways which resonate in me. I visualize what super surgical technologies neutralizing the most terrible weapons. A mere sensitive cut is what separates the surgeon from the serial killer anyhow. I heal my relationship to our intergenerational traumas like world wars, atrocities, world slavery, historic, the Holocaust, atomic bombings, on a conceptual karmic level. My dream worlds are healthier, less materialistic versions of Tokyo, Las Vegas, Disneyland, and every possible fantastic world on the primordial level, which I hypothesize as the multi-moment. I basically experience mundane activities and their highest versions despite being ignored on Earth. What everything in our story is driving at in its healthiest, non-segregating form or shared dreams, experienced and reshaped accordingly to our highest subjectivity. We were once unified in anonymous form in the beginning. Now we're self-conscious and divided, but we can be self-aware ones within the one. Self-aware ones within the one. I translate this thought realm according to our universities, libraries which store centuries of ideas, experiences, accounts according to the subject matter, history, astronomy, fiction, non-fiction, biography. The same applies to DVD racks, theme park attractions, museums. For example, theme parks display the attractions, exhibits of different eras, including fantastic worlds which reduces sensory overload. I also visualize these worlds as a spiritual internet comprised of interdimensional websites. I've been saying all these things years before recently people have been using similar analogies. These 3D models of earthly culture stabilizes the infinite info flow of the multiverse to be. These inner worlds are also symbolic versions of my anatomy. My innards are bullet train tunnels. My neurons are lush tropical forests and my nervous system is a neon anime-like supercity with ads and billboards flashing positive affirmations like, "We love you, you're always seen, appreciated, and you're invited to many parties. You have all of infinity to visit." This hints at the mysterious, psychedelic cognitive processes of dreaming, which you experience according to your bodily alignments, tensions. These super Tokyos or portal Tokyos also have neon signs that flash entire lifetimes and story narratives, including their video and book racks. The city conforms to my feeling and I shift to and fro without losing my spectator view. It's like pausing a YouTube video while checking your email or reading an online article and returning, multitasking on the heavenly scale. The multi-moment resolves the time paradoxes presented by cause and effect in my personal simulations. This trippy concept may literally be warping our social course, which is why I believe that individuals, the masses, need to co-shape this unified fields within fields, rewriting an impersonal narrative with our own, as opposed to it being dictated by a few. The multi-moment is the penultimate narrative of one story aligned with all narratives. One can express one's ultimate lesson in life highlight reel in a variety of forms while encouraging the world to do the same. Online sharing on the cosmic level. This level of deeper insights, catalyzed by others' wisdom, hints at everyone developing a common language built on inspiration, beyond plagiarization. This is akin to a crowd giving their unique interpretation of a work of art, offering clues to the perceptual puzzle while pondering its meaning. Whether a painting, film, novel, most of us either create, participate in, or inspire high art. Again, this cultivates the transcendental reasoning to realize the all-stabilizing multi-moment. For example, you can show the unseen observer, some distant dreamer, how the tyranny and the revolution it provoked are striving at the same thing through your symbolic dream. This simultaneously requires and encourages a borderline telepathic dialogue beyond plagiarization. We adapt each other's narratives like a biographer or ghostwriter, rewriting all experiences according to our unique, less judgmental healing perspective for the variance of elucidations. We become both the hero and villain, victim and victimizer. Our hyper-empathy spores a third healing self that unites the objective and subjective, environment and inhabitant. We experience all experiences from a core identity we recognize as our own, despite our many self-designed avatars, guises, and alter egos. Spiritual gaming. This is just a surreal symbolic version of the multi-layered self reconciling daily mundane contradictions and tensions of basic tasks and human interactions. For instance, we'd be overwhelmed on a subatomic level by familiar things like cities, people, friends, relationships, sports, commuting. Seconds and minutes can seem like years and decades from that perspective of the atom subatomic. Thus, multidimensional ventures are just higher levels of 3D. We constantly rewrite the organic script, allowing all scenarios to coexist. For instance, apocalyptic scenarios, the fates envisioned by various myths, religions, can still exist, while their highest outcome thrives in parallel forms. Or we can rewrite or add to others' incomplete visions, experiences, which contributes more outcomes and alternatives. We even purify and personalize formal religion and philosophy according to what makes sense to the individual. Eternity is compressed into one multi-layered experience which has many versions that doesn't confuse observers or participants. No threat of dislocation or divine separation. For example, we experience some event, a meeting, vacation, sport, in mind-blowing, movie-like simulations, unlike a sci-fi epic, romance in whatever era, according to one's sense, though we know we're experiencing one centralizing moment despite our seemingly scattered eternal dreams in whatever reality. We may recall our parallel experiences and others' interpretations of our own in that meeting point of realities in ways beyond confusion, bias, xenophobia, and contradiction per our complementary multi-perspectives. This is the reverse of the various divine separations expressed in Hinduism and other religions, so there are no karmic repercussions. Judgment Day here will also be experienced in a hyper-empathic way. We'll feel everyone's triumphs and trauma, understanding how we co-shape each other on the ancestral level, how even the most remote person in distant history somehow contributed to the human condition which affects us all to this day. We'll realize how forgiveness is a reverse process. Healing those who you hurt encourages those who hurt you to heal you and to forgive those who hurt them, and so on. In my world, my kindreds are sexy goddess warriors, a bunch of deities who are simultaneously mothers, daughters, and other whatever roles. I need not watch porn or act out my fantasies with non-consenting women. This non-perverted, healing level of intimacy is only fathomable in advanced realms beyond the traumatized ego. It's ironic that we fear non-hedonistic intimacy, but strangers get in each other's face in conflicts regardless. That's perverted to me, not constant bonding. We're meant to inspire and project our best at each other. Natural healers, not drain one another's spirits with envy-inducing competition and traumatized hate cliques which discourage all-inclusive revolution. Paradoxing is my transcendental superpower, or conceptual superpower, of my characters. It is my martial internalization of all culture data, like advanced mathematics, linguistics, arts, innovative concepts, technologies. Paradoxing is a transphysical futurist, shape-shifting, time-warping martial art wherein I punch like a super surgeon, dance and shift like particles, subduing even nuclear warfare, mind control, debates, and assorted interrelated tensions on the pre-quantum phantom level. This culminates into a futurist mind-body-spirit system that allows me to create my own visualizations and affirmations, bordering prayers, meditations, poetry, and peak performance. For example, I say, what doesn't overwhelm you makes you more skilled. What doesn't drive you crazy makes you saner. Their blindness gives you more perspectives. And ask the answer. Don't internalize lies, and so on. I never quote anyone. I model my utopias after what I sense is the highest drive. Again, all-inclusive revolution. To stress, you need to be an anti-us against them activist. Sociosymbiosis is the healthiest dynamic to achieve this because even the most corrupt, destructive systems and processes like the military, diseases, and even fascism need to work as units in order to get the most out of its components. Imagine if we apply this to a more mindful, healthy venture. Imagine if we apply our hyper-individualistic self-help model to the very sick collective body which compels us to prove ourselves. Imagine if we use the same energy, self-sacrifice, and enthusiasm we use to go to sporting events, concerts, Black Friday sales, or wait in long lines to something more exhilarating, transcendental, and empowering, like all-inclusive, soul-reclaiming revolution. Achieving this change is simple. We declutter our social bedroom and arrange abundant resources and citizens. It's more about momentum, not just choices. Educators and psychologists act as talent scouts, seeing potential in everyone, prepare the children and restore the adults. Or they learn about our evolutionary weaknesses from those with genetic weaknesses, ailments, and disabilities. We identify our sick body as embodying everything we hate in others. It's a mutation of a psychopath, drug addict, slacker, slob, workaholic, only we're scattered, healthy, functioning selves in denial. In this sense, no one is clean. Even the most cultured, polite, well-to-do, upper-class person. The debates are constructive strategies about which social reform to take, not about which corrupt leader to vote for, like doctors strategizing how to mend a broken body. Otherwise, do we really agree to disagree or just refuse to see? Also, our debates will see clues in every question. We won't shame people for their supposedly dumb questions or even my speculations. You'll see clues in how I speculate and how I think rather than judging it as off the deep end, conspiracy, whatever. How would a day in the life of Ken or anyone be in such an awakened culture? I'd walk down the Back Bay area of Boston. Only people size each other up in a good way, like newborns with refreshing perspectives, studying a utopian painting. We'll be more sensitive of rhythms and such, beyond cultural constraints of poise etiquette. The highest cultures inspires you to see, not scrutinize, to work along your gravity chi, not restrict it to posturing. We'll have interactive Zen experiences or a continuum of Satori's, savoring the cinematic colors of the sky, sun, and hearing voices and steps as choruses. Parks, skies, and streets expand in conjunction with your open, receptive mind. Shut your mouth and open your mind. Everything enters. Strangers greet each other and improvise many festivities beyond notions of pyramid schemes, sex trafficking, and other unnatural tactics to practice what is natural. Constant social healing and exploration. We won't limit our empathy and compassion only to what's innocent and unthreatening, like dogs, kids, elderly, which has cynical, sinister, demonizing implications to those who don't fit such shallow standards of innocence. We don't have to fear each other, so if we believe. I speculate about a social model opposite of our neo-medieval competitive one in which we drain each other. We instead project our best at each other, which allows them to co-shape us to be super smart, intelligent, beautiful as well. We even adopt each other's genes on the cellular level, like an actor morphing with his or her role on levels beyond plagiarization. Why not adopt our deepest qualities and form ancestor genes, like how we absorb each other's bacteria? We can't do anything, our unique variations of others' talents and healing qualities. Not like an expert or master of a specific field, but anyone can do higher math, perform basic surgical procedures, compete in most sports. Again, emphasizing for the sake of effective redundancy, we can evolve to a race of self-mastery, not a master race, not a Mr. Master Race, due to variations of diversity. Perhaps elites do this already with the genetic equivalent of data mining. I imagine world culture becoming so attuned that energy and matter accelerates in correspondence to our heightened awakening, merging and bridging our realities. Each culture still has its identity, but adopts others as well. Multiverse Japan becomes the Japanese version of Puerto Rico, America, India, etc., and vice versa with all nation universes within the multiverse to be. This applies to an idealized era as well. 1960s version of the modern and future, 1970s, 40s, and so on. All times coexistent with some timelessness of nostalgia. Again, I've always thought these things until they became recent popular things in fiction and all that stuff. I also render multi-engineering systems of the perceptual universe. My oracle data-like illustrations symbolically map out thinking processes that are unfathomable to me. They translate imaginary equations, theorems, and other evolutionary building blocks into paranormal scenes of interdimensional worlds, beings that give quantum, biological, cosmic, mechanical, geological, psychological, and everything in between sentient, accessible forms. Metaphor is the universal language. Even scientists and doctors use metaphors to diagnose, hypothesize, and apply. Perhaps all code data and numbers will evolve to pure imagery since data interprets mostly the organic and we visionary humans are the observers, translators. My conceptual art and stories translates our cosmic DNA into characters with needs according to the narrative. In this sense, our self-like cells, atoms, particles, cosmic emissions, photons, etc., overlap in many surreal ways as if playing parts in our deepest dreams, whether a circulatory system city, organ planet, neuron aircraft, thought form alien. Sometimes I render organic mechanisms bordering the metallic, biological that are higher adaptive versions of basic technologies, architecture, and engineering methods. Again, alluding to what I think technology could allude to, something more organic and sentient. Now I explore the loss of my true identity in the other scenario. I apply this to our dislocation of primal mind and how it's used by oligarchs to control us. What if some super sophisticated control system robbed me of my inner vision and used it to dictate me and others, or they've hijacked my innate symbols and personal language, iconography, my dreams for my ideal life, career, lover. This psychic plagiarization is assimilated into their mind data mining system to fashion a distorted totalitarian utopia and its corresponding crude mega technologies and superweaponry that we worship as being the pinnacles of progress. They can use our dreams and abilities to organize, calculate, and engineer trends, or create artistic, scientific, cinematic, cultural innovations which seem to be the concoctions of elite geniuses. What if their epidata is comprised of our basic behavior patterns and thinking processes? What if the most unexpected people contribute more to Silicon Valley, NASA, Ivy League schools, more than we're aware of on some psychic level? Even the most retarded, comatose, disabled person has brilliant dreams that can be hijacked, including those afflicted with dementia. Are satellites, stealth fighters, particle smashers, and other far-out concepts of movies technology based on the surreal ships and worlds in our minds? Do all mind-mapping supercomputers translate these fleeting images of cosmic unconsciousness into various blueprints? Isn't it interesting that our super societies popped up by being around the very third world immigrants it resents, envies, and exploits? Are all outsiders and the marginalized the true higher intelligences SETI tries to contact? The actual inspiration for Luke Skywalker, Rocky Balboa, Rambo, Harry Potter, and other elite icons? What's meant to empower and inspire you within can be taken by a mind rapist to subjugate you. Is our innate ability to categorize, measure, deduce spaces, think in unique ways also hijacked and incorporated into alien-like equations and computer codes, inaccessible to us, used against us in the forms of discriminating IQ tests and such? For example, I wake up as another Ken. I have no sense of being a fit, prolific, visionary artist-writer who has created his own inner culture, philosophy, and fitness routines. I'm an average Joe with no opinions about culture, politics, the human condition. I just watch TV, work a menial job, have a few humble friends, rather allies. I'm a bloated nerd who loves sci-fi, comics, and general pop culture. Suddenly, I'm besieged by intrusive thoughts, hallucinations about being a paradoxing champion of the cosmos, that I can shapeshift into Kennosaurs, and that I'm the chosen son of the shadow goddess Ninja. I become so obsessed that I act out my visions, telling me to save the world from petty elites, myopic visionaries, cerebrally retarded intellectuals, colonized colonizers, savage nobles, and other terms not characteristic of my meek character. I call myself Time Puerto-Rican and get into fitness, determined to be bioforged into a superhero god. This is especially complicated because I misinterpret these visions that are meant to empower and inspire, hence the implications of violent extremism and fanaticism. In this alternative scenario, I may act out my valid symbolic exorcisms of historic wars, genocide, and revolution, depicted in my actual booklets in my conscious life, which are depicted in a healthy way. But I act them out in misguided ways in this kind of imaginary scenario, which describes possible mind control and all that. This inversion of our inner power also applies to those who commit atrocities in war, crime, or implicates even docile propagandized populaces who support such a violent, hyper-militaristic system and cannibalizing economy to maintain their privilege. So we're all this is used against everyone. It's interesting that many so-called psychopaths have split personalities and alter egos, like Son of Sam or the otaku child killer in Japan who believed he was the Rat Man. This implicates how intelligence agencies can manufacture psychopaths or Manchurian candidates through mind control, like MKUltra. I suggest reading Alex Constantine's work, Psychic Dictatorship of America and Virtual Government, to know the details. Also studied the work of his mentor, May Brussel, who you can find online, who covers the relationship between fascism, mind control, and political corruption, the various applications. Again, I focus on how the powers that be not weaponize our own superpowers against us and how we can own them, like the writer and artist organizing his own characters and worlds, not have outside agents use them to divide and control their creative. I suspect that unethical mentalists have studied meditation, shamanism, hallucinogenics, peak performance techniques, hypnosis, altered states, the art of S&M seduction, hazing, trauma tactics for for the purpose of character reconstruction, and other things I did to myself in a healthier, consented manner merely by unearthing my superpower or pushing myself to my limits, at my own pace. They use these techniques on the mass level, traumatizing and propagandizing people to fight wars, support inhumane policies via conformity and groupthink. Soldiers, police, serial killers, school shooters, and general fascist terrorists, horrorists. So there are terrorists, but there are also horrorists. Either follow their duty in states of Orwellian doublethink, cognitive dissonance, or just hallucinate that they're following some warped higher calling as they impose oppressive rule or commit atrocities they wouldn't do in their right mind. They also limit our perceptions, subjecting us to totalitarian models of beauty, intelligence, coolness. Project in crowd, ideological fanaticism, material fashionism, and hive conformity is the key. On a side note, it's no coincidence that they use two of our greatest powers against us, our visionary imaginations, dreams of transformation, and eroticism or sensual love, as opposed to hedonism. We're encouraged to repress them or give them extreme expressions in the form of underground culture, porn, the black market, extreme violence, violent culture, commercial works like comics, Hollywood sci-fi consumption. Or again, we have designated experts and gurus and artists dictate our visions, implicating cults and cult films. We have as many archetypes and passions that we stimulate with every cell neuron. It's not limited to Carl Jung's interpretations of Tolkien's universe, George Lucas's Harry Potter, anime, etc. We have infinite kindreds, realms, ideals within us, but they can be hijacked, weaponized, and used against us. They can take our goddess archetype or god and use it to manufacture mass followings for designated studs and starlets, ensuring profit speculations of the next big thing, or manipulate stalkers and other deviants to misplace their divine to genetic sense onto the wrong people, feeding the beast that is surveillance in the prison industrial complex. I understand that most ideas have been weaponized, the cultural, spiritual, scientific. For instance, we can use AI to envision our higher potential, but it can be used to create another radicalized totalitarian model. Elites can escape into some simulated reality or physically artificial world universe, which I wrote about earlier, abandoning the earth they ruined. Their unexamined hatreds and traumas migrating as well, postponing the very organic trans-evolution they've envisioned mechanically. The same applies if they colonize space, though I explore healthier alternatives with my utopian tales. This example of my alternative, unawakened self is a metaphor for our own somnambulism and the deep social control mechanisms at work. Our primal need to devise challenges or have a more consenting relationship to them, as opposed to being drafted via domination culture-induced peer pressure, i.e., extreme sports is something trendy, not to attack it, but like CrossFit or whatever is considered, the ultimate test of one's, as being the highest indicator of physical strength and prowess. Running triathlons for endurance and so on becomes undermined into a petty, desensitized game. Neo-Roman Empire-like exhibitions. So are our healthy desires to bond, explore, distorted. I sense that the populace has been robbed of its collective superconsciousness. Our dreams, ideas, personalities have been undermined by social engineers with their radicalized caste structures since the formation of domination systems. The masterminds themselves are mind-controlled by their own mechanical model of something sentient and liberating. Hence the stealthy influence and our pre-suggestibility. This is why we escape into poop pop culture, movies, and even high culture. Why we worship experts, masters, celebrities, gurus, messiahs, revolutionaries,